What if the warnings you ignored were the ones that could save your life? That's exactly what happened with gospel legend Donnie McClurkin. And trust me, you won't believe what he revealed. At 65, a time when most people look to slow down and enjoy peace, Donnie was hit with a shocking truth. He was diagnosed with heart failure. But that's just the beginning. The real twist? He said God had warned him long before the doctors did, and he ignored it. Let me tell you, this wasn't just a story about illness. It was about faith, denial, and the painful cost of not listening to your body or to God. It shook his fans, shook the gospel world, and shook Donnie to his core. People knew Donnie as the man with the voice that could move your soul. But behind the scenes, something dark was growing, something that even he didn't want to face. This is how it all started. Donnie began feeling tired for no reason. Simple things, like walking upstairs, left him breathless. His legs and feet started swelling. He felt weak, drained. But like many of us, he brushed it off. He thought it was just part of getting older or maybe stress from his ministry. He kept going, kept pushing. He said, I felt God telling me to slow down, to take care of myself. But I didn't listen. This is where it gets interesting. Donnie actually felt that God was speaking to him, not in loud thunder, but in those small, quiet moments. He felt warnings in his spirit, a pull to rest, to check on his health. But he said no, he was too busy traveling, preaching, singing, serving others. The signs were all around him, but he turned a blind eye. And that's when destiny took an unexpected turn. After months of ignoring the signs, Donnie went in for a routine checkup. He didn't expect anything serious. But after some tests, the doctors sat him down. Their faces were serious, and that's when they told him the truth. Heart failure. The words hit him like a storm. He couldn't believe it. This was something that happened to other people, not him. But here's the shocking part. Donnie later said that deep down, he knew this was coming. Not because of medical symptoms, but because of the spiritual warnings he had pushed away. He said, God warned me, but I ignored the signs. And now he was facing the results of that decision. You might think the diagnosis was the worst part, but what makes this story different? It wasn't just about his heart, it was about his faith. The moment he heard those words, Donnie said he felt everything inside him break. He felt fear, he felt shame, he questioned everything. Why me, God, he asked. How could this happen to the same man who had preached healing for decades, the same man who helped millions through their pain? The craziest part? Even as he battled this terrifying diagnosis, Donnie kept it quiet. He didn't tell the world right away. He carried the weight alone. He didn't want to seem weak. He didn't want to disappoint the people who saw him as strong and unshakable. But inside, he was breaking. This story wasn't just about heart failure, it was about spiritual failure. It was about how even the strongest can fall, and how ignoring the quiet voice of warning can lead to loud consequences. Donnie's journey was far from over. In fact, what happened next would take him even deeper into a fight that was not only for his body, but for his soul. After the diagnosis, Donnie's life didn't just slow down, it stopped. Everything felt like a blur. The man who once stood on stages lifting thousands with his voice was now lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to wires, hearing doctors talk about ejection fractions and heart damage. He didn't even understand half of what they were saying at first. All he knew was that his heart wasn't working the way it should, and if he didn't make changes soon, he could die. He spent days in the hospital, and the silence in that room, it wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. That's when he started to think back to all the moments when he had chances to rest, all the days when he felt God tugging at him, whispering, take care of yourself. But he didn't. He kept putting ministry above his health. He told himself that God's work had to come first. But now, lying there in that bed, he realized something powerful. You can't serve from an empty vessel. One day, alone in that hospital room, Donnie finally broke down. Not in front of anyone else, just him and God. He said, Lord, I'm scared. That's a sentence you never expect to hear from someone like Donnie McClurkin. But this moment was different. He was facing something no fame, no talent, no prayer from a stranger could fix. And for the first time, he realized he had to face himself. He has spent his whole life helping others fight their demons, helping them rise from pain. But now he was staring into the eyes of his own fear, his own weakness. It was no longer about crowds or concerts, it was about survival. And still, he kept asking himself, how did I let it get this far? He thought about the years he ignored his blood pressure, skipped checkups, stayed on the road too long, barely ate, barely slept. He thought he was strong. But strength without wisdom, it can break you. Then came the twist no one saw coming. As the doctor started treatment and gave him strict orders, change your diet, rest more, take these pills every day, Donnie made a bold decision. He didn't want to live the rest of his life depending on pills. He wanted healing, not just in his body, but in his soul. He felt like he had failed himself, failed the people who loved him, failed the God he served, but even in that low place, something else began to rise, hope. He said, maybe this was God's mercy, not his punishment. That one line changed everything. Maybe this sickness was the wake-up call he needed. Maybe this breakdown was the beginning of a breakthrough. And with that thought, he made a decision that would shape everything that came next. He wasn't going to die in that hospital bed. He was going to fight. But this fight wouldn't be on a stage with lights and music. It would be in the quiet places, at the dinner table, choosing vegetables instead of junk, on the treadmill, walking slowly, one step at a time, in his room, crying out to God, not as a preacher, but as a man trying to live. And little did he know, someone unexpected was about to walk into his life, someone who would turn his entire journey upside down. She wasn't famous. She wasn't from the church world. Her name was Maya, a quiet, soft-spoken woman who worked as a nurse at the rehab center Donnie was moved to after his hospital stay. She had no idea who he was at first. To her, he was just Mr. McClurkin, a middle-aged man recovering from heart failure. But something about her spirit, it was calm, peaceful, and kind in a way Donnie hadn't felt in a long time. Every morning, Maya would check on him, but she didn't just ask about his blood pressure or pills. She asked about him, how he was really feeling, what he dreamed about, what scared him. At first, Donnie answered with short words, still keeping his guard up. But slowly, he opened up. He told her things he hadn't even said in interviews or sermons. Things about loneliness, about how fame had taken him far, but still left him feeling empty some nights, how he had never fully healed from childhood wounds, how even after touching millions, he sometimes felt like no one really saw him. And Maya, she listened. That was all she did. No preaching, no quoting scriptures, just presence. It was healing in the quietest form. One day, as Donnie was walking slowly through the garden at the center, trying to rebuild strength, he said to her, "You know, I've been singing about healing all my life, but I don't think I ever let myself receive it." That moment hit him harder than any diagnosis. He had been so busy trying to save others that he forgot how to save himself. Weeks turned into months. Donnie got stronger, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. He started journaling, started praying differently, not just from a pulpit, but from his pain. And Maya, she never left his side. She challenged him to eat better, think clearer, and most importantly, live honestly. No more pretending to be strong when he was weak. No more hiding behind ministry. But just as things started to feel peaceful again, the next twist came, and it came fast. One evening, Donnie got a call from his manager. There was an opportunity to headline a major gospel tour overseas, a big comeback, millions of fans, lights, cameras, everything he once dreamed of. And just like that, the old world started pulling him back. The question was he ready? Could he go back into that life without losing the new version of himself? He talked to Maya about it. She looked at him and said, "Just make sure you don't return to the stage. If it costs you the man you finally became, off of it." Her words stayed in his mind like a song on repeat. He stood at a crossroads now, fame or peace, applause or healing, and the truth, he wasn't sure what choice he'd make. The night before the tour was supposed to begin, Donnie sat alone in his hotel room, staring at the suit laid out on the bed. It was custom made, gold trim, The kind of suit that screamed gospel royalty. The room was filled with flowers, welcome cards, and tickets. Everyone was waiting. But Donnie, he felt silent inside. He walked to the window and looked out at the busy city. He could hear the echo of his own voice in his mind, those songs he'd sung for years, songs that had healed others, songs that made people cry, shout, believe. But for some reason, tonight they felt distant. He picked up his phone and dialed Maya. She answered quietly, as if she'd been waiting. "I don't know if I can do this," he said. There was a long pause before she replied. "Then don't." Those two words hit him harder than any applause ever had. He didn't go, not to the first night or the second. The press went wild, rumors spread, some said he was sick again, some said he had a breakdown. But Donnie didn't bother explaining. He had spent too many years explaining himself to people who only knew the surface. This time, he chose silence over spotlight. Instead, he stayed in a small house outside the city with a view of the woods and a quiet lake nearby. He started singing again, not in front of crowds, but at sunrise, alone on his porch, not for fame, but for freedom. Sometimes Maya would sit with him and they would talk about life, love, healing, and God. Not the version people perform, but the version they wrestle with in the dark. Months passed, the world moved on, new stars rose. His name faded from headlines, but Donnie didn't mind, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing anything. One Sunday morning, a small church nearby invited him to speak. No cameras, no expectations, just a room full of people who needed hope. Donnie stood up without a suit, without a choir, and told them the truth. He said, "I used to think God wanted my strength, but now I know he wanted my honesty." There was silence in the room. A few people cried. One woman nodded deeply, as if her soul had been waiting for those words. And that was it. Donnie didn't disappear. He just transformed. He still sang, sometimes at churches, sometimes at weddings, sometimes just to the trees. He wrote a book, not about music, but about identity, about the kind of healing that doesn't come in front of an audience. And slowly, people began to understand Donnie McClurkin didn't step away from gospel. He stepped into himself. He found love, not in grand declarations, but in quiet mornings and deep conversations. He found faith, not in stage lights, but in silence. And he found peace, not through applause, but by finally letting go of everything that made him feel like he had to earn it. The man who once sang "Stand" had finally learned how to sit still, not because he gave up, but because he finally arrived at the place he was always searching for, home, within himself.